Is he on number 4? All right, so we got the Attorney General, Todd Rokita, joining us here in The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Todd, how you doing, man?
Casey, great to see you.
Man, it's good to see you again.
It's always on the phone, so I don't see you.
Usually,
but now I see you.
Right. Usually if we're talking, it's on the phone, or you're at an event down in St. Joseph County, and I'm able to see you there. I came up to you this time. So we made the trip because you were doing some campaign stuff here. So how's the campaigning going, man?
Oh, I think it's going great. You know, I'm a nervous Nelly. I never take anything for granted. So I'm going to run through the tape. And so we're going burning candles at both ends. So, you know, out the door at 6:30 today after being home last night at 12:30 finally. You know, it's the life of a statewide. You're always running around. So, but I love it. Great reception from people of this state. They want a fighter. You know, they want they want someone that's in their corner. And that's how I always felt. That's how I've operated my office. And that's what we're going to continue to do if the people still want me to do it. And it's been the highest honor of my life to have done it.
Well, I think that when I talk to the people in the Michiana area, I would assume it's probably very similar around Allen County and probably all of the counties in between. You're probably the state office holder that people identify with the most.
Is that right? You're not just saying that?
No. I'm dead. I'm dead.
Because I have
serious.
a security detail outside. Or
you and I have known each other for a long time. For those of you who don't know, like, it's the weirdest thing because I've gotten one thank you note from a politician for sticking up for them on my show in my entire life, and it was Todd before he was the Attorney General. It was the first time I'd ever gotten a thank you note from anybody. And so it's always like, okay, well, I'm always going to make time for him then because that just doesn't happen. But where I'm at, they don't like Holcomb. They don't like the establishment wing of the state GOP. There are local politicians that they really like. But as far as at the state level, no. It's Todd Rokita comes up consistently as the guy who seems to stick up for us.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes
who sticks up for us, not seems. Shakespeare said, "I know not seems."
Exactly.
But now I sound really established.
I was just at his house.
Shakespeare.
I just took a bunch of listeners to his house, actually.
Oh, really?
A couple months ago. Yeah, we took a bunch of listeners over to the UK. But
really?
Yeah. We try to do good trips for the people, man.
Look at you, money pants.
I didn't pay for it. I couldn't have done that. That would have been something. But yeah, I think it's just consistent. Obviously, some of that they want things to be done more than you can probably do them. You know, there's always a disconnect in what you legally can do and that sort of thing. And so I got a question actually from a local lawmaker in the Michiana area. I don't want to say who they are or anything else, but they did ask, they said, hey, is there anything that he can do as the Attorney General to stop libraries from exposing kids to adult and graphic material? Because they're having a big issue with that in various territories down there.
Yeah, it's a terrible issue, right? I mean, because in the sense that it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, what adult, right? And this goes to the larger sense about genitalia surgeries, about, you know, the party that wants to put boys in women's locker rooms and all that. What adult acts this way? What adult?
I mean, I can
goes
think of
around
one category.
Yeah, Democrat, liberals and or pedophiles themselves outright. Yep. And it's just sick. I mean, there's only one group of people that's putting America first, is putting Indiana first, and you know that's the group I associate with, and proud to do it. But forget, I don't even mean to be partisan, right? It's just what adult in their right mind thinks is a good idea. And if you looked at some of these books, they're disgusting.
Yes,
they're pornographic, and you know, you get engaged with some of these adults on this subject a little bit. And you say, hey, I didn't have one, but I say, you know what? I got a book in my bag here of what you're talking about, what I don't want to see in the kids section of a library. Not that it's going to be banned. I just don't want to even see it in the kids section. Let me get it out and show it to you. And they go, oh, no, we don't need to see it.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. Why don't you need to see it? Well, you're making kids see it. Why, you know, why should you be offended to see it? You know, it just proves how hypocritical they are. To answer the question, if this was a state lawmaker you're talking about, he or she has to make the law. I mean, I am not a lawmaker. I enforce the law, and they have. It's not to say that they've done a bad job. They have been trying, and it's when I say it's a terrible issue, it's because there are constitutional issues, and a school library is different than a public library. in terms of what the standard is for what's allowed in it and the free speech ramifications that go with that. So it's, in finding that balance, and as the old Supreme Court decision said once, I can't define pornography except that I know it when I see it.
Right.
And so that's where we're in that kind of area, Casey, where it's difficult to legislate exactly what should be in and what can't be in. But that's what they got to do. And no, the General Assembly has not given me the power to go police libraries.
One of the questions that I get on that particular thing is there are many people
I'll
who
take
believe
that power if anyone's listening.
I'm sure you would. I'm working on it, man. But I assume that you would know the answer to this, and maybe you don't right offhand, and I apologize if you don't. But there is a question that I get regularly that Indiana law even says, like drawings, paintings, artwork that depicts this type of stuff, like some of these books that we're talking about, still qualifies as pornography, and there is an age limit in the state of Indiana. So can't that be used in some way, shape, or form?
Well, I'm not exactly familiar with what you're talking about. Yeah, so yes, you did surprise me. But that's okay. This is radio. I'm a big boy, and I'm an office holder. So you're not asking me anything different than any.
And I couldn't even point to the statute.
Yeah,
this
you're not. This is what citizens are on. That's on their minds. So they're coming up, and I would and that's what they asked me. Things like this, and so what I would say to them is like, well, from a constitutional perspective, it's still really a gray area. We don't know what pornography is except when we see it. Then we can know. So it's really hard to define statutorily. You may be right. I'm not familiar if there is that statute, and I'll happy to go back and look at it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what. We'll come on again and we'll figure it out. I'll give a report.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Logansport certainly starting to catch fire. Man, Logansport is.
Well, it's all over the Midwest. It's all over Indiana.
It really is everywhere. And it's in a lot of swing states. It's in a lot of small towns. Logansport, it's like Springfield, Ohio was getting the attention, and Logansport started reaching out to me. They started reaching out to Caleb Blakesley, who does the morning show here at WOWO. And, I think that we covered it, blew it up. Now Indianapolis media is calling the people of Logansport liars and racists and things of that nature. What do you know about Logansport? Do you have any information?
So zoomed out, and I'll zoom in. I know Logansport. I used to represent it in Congress. Of course, I'm Logansport's Attorney General. And they're good people there. They're not liars like this ridiculous left-wing media, which is a nice way to put them, would suggest. Salt of the earth. Some of the best Hoosiers I know. And don't want to. I can't go into much detail right now, except Casey, to you and your listeners on Logansport. Mm-hmm. Stay tuned.
Okay.
I was given some new powers in July. Okay, since July, I've already worked on South Bend.
Yep.
Worked on St. Joseph's County. We got East Chicago and Gary to rescind their ordinances on Sanctuary City. This is all Sanctuary City. The one law enforcement agency so far that hasn't cooperated with me, and by cooperation, we simply ask questions. We try to do it informally by email, on the phone, and then when we get ignored, we send a CID, and then when that gets blown off, we go to court. And that's where I'm taking Monroe County right now. Mm-hmm. Seymour down in southern Indiana has a huge influx of illegal aliens. I don't know why President Trump's saying migrant. I don't know where that's coming from. They're illegal aliens. They do not belong here. They're raising our crime rates. They're increasing our sex trafficking. They're killing us, literally killing us with fentanyl. Okay? I'm not saying they're doing all of it, but sure, it's not helping, and it's a significant increase because of them. Ask any law enforcement agency. So I'm investigating those places for Sanctuary City. Now, Logansport, under our statute, is not a sanctuary city because there's absolutely no evidence to date that the elected officials there, unlike these other places, have put in an ordinance or have a practice or a policy that shows that they are defying federal ICE detainers or doing things that would create the sanctuary.
Right.
Logansport is getting crushed with a bunch of illegal aliens and Haitians, particularly, that's running up their hospital bills. I'm talking to teachers in different parts of the state, not just Logansport, that tell me, you know what, I'm quitting because every day I get a list of new kids coming into my class, way over 30 per class now in the total class size, of names they can't pronounce. And then they have to dial an 800 number, right, where they can pick the translator they want to explain these non-English new students that just showed up what the homework is for the day. all at the expense of the students and of the taxpayers that are supposed to be in the school. So that's more what's going on in Logansport. So I don't have direct authority on that. I haven't given it, but we are creatively looking at other statutes like public nuisance and deceptive sales practices to see in particular areas what we can do to impact this. So I didn't way too long of explanation, Casey, but I know so many of your listeners are interested in it. I'm doing what I can to use the laws that I have to go after this, and I don't know that anyone else is.
All right. And I'm trying to get over there. Spent a couple of days there, talked to the mayor. Good. Because the mayor just seems like he was just blindsided by all of this. So, he doesn't have, basically he just woke up one day and he's like, holy smokes, I got like a 25 to 30%
best solution to all this, best shortest term solution is elect Donald Trump president of the United States.
There you go. You got time to stick around because we got plenty of other things we need to talk about. We got the Attorney General, Todd Rokita, who is also running for re-election. We'll talk a little bit about some of that stuff as well and how you can support him. More coming up on The Burning Truth. And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Joining us in studio here in Fort Wayne is the Attorney General, Todd Rokita, also running for re-election. AG, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate it.
I'm looking at your TV monitor, and Kamala Harris is walking across the stage.
Yeah, her closing argument with over a half a dozen lies in it. Yeah, that thing.
I'm just, God help us all.
Hopefully he's going to help us now.
Right.
And we don't have to worry about it later. So when you were Secretary of State, Todd, you were actually the father of photo ID, right? Yeah.
So as Secretary of State, we became the first state in the nation to have a photo ID at our polling places. This was back in like 2005 and so forth. And of course, again, the General Assembly passed the law. I did help them write it as Secretary of State, and then it was all on me to implement it. I only got sued 4 times.
That's actually not bad. Really, it's only 4. Yeah, considering
considering what happens to me now,
right?
And the Supreme Court, actually, a much more liberal Supreme Court than we have now, upheld it by 6-3, which was a great number in those days.
So South Bend, Indiana, they're now kind of in the crosshairs as a sanctuary city.
Okay, yep.
They became a sanctuary city under Pete Buttigieg. He made a big push for them to have IDs. They work with a local immigrant organization there to get those identifications for people. And tell us a little bit about what's happening in South Bend. Right.
So, let me preface this by saying I love our law enforcement. I defend our police. I don't defund them. And so when we approach, we have this new power, like I was saying in the last segment, about policing for sanctuary cities. And what that means is there an ordinance? Is there a police practice, a police policy, something in their manual at a local department that calls for non-cooperation or not cooperating with our federal partners, and among other things? And so that's an example of the sanctuary city nature, the sanctuary nature of a sanctuary city. And so we had questions coming to us from various sources saying, hey, South Bend is a problem. St. Joseph County may be a problem. Mm-hmm. And, so we do what we do. We don't send out a press release, and we don't blast them with formal interrogatories under oath, which is what a CID is. We call them and we email them. And we say, hey, we're hearing this. Can you give us some clarification? As a partner would. But then when we get ignored and we don't get responded to, I have a duty to take it further. And so you see it in its furthest sense so far in Monroe County, where we're actually suing him, and he's being very defiant, this sheriff, which is unlike any sheriff I've ever encountered.
Yeah, most people have been, maybe they resisted a little bit, but they're like, okay, we have to get in compliance with state law. Right. But Monroe County is, he's just fighting you tooth and nail.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I think he's wrong. A judge will see if he's wrong. The statutes aren't written perfectly either. And in the St. Joseph's County case and the South Bend Police Department case, we formally sent these CIDs. They now have acknowledged those questions under oath, that they're going to answer them and cooperate. And so we're going to look at the answers, and maybe they have explanation, and that's as far as it'll go. And then if they don't, we're going to ask them to stop their sanctuary city nature. And if they don't, they'll be in court too.
Yeah, ask Congressman Banks sometime about the fight that he and I had with the mayor of South Bend recently. Good Lord, over the same thing. All right, let's explain what you and the Secretary of State, Diego Morales, are doing. You basically have almost 600,000 people who registered to vote.
Yep.
They did not provide a state ID, a fact that gets left out of this story everywhere, right?
Right.
So you need to confirm whether or not they are, in fact, legally allowed to vote. They have to be citizens to vote.
Right.
And there is no requirement federally at all to register, to prove citizenship, to register to vote in a federal election. So kind of explain this.
Yeah, and let me first explain a little bit of a premise. Depending on the ID you show at the polling place, that ID or the ID you use to register, to register a vote, you can use a utility bill sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not until state law changes next year that that Diego and the county, Diego Morales, our Secretary of State, great Secretary of State, and our local election boards can affirmatively check for the non-citizenship status. So it's possible that even if you have an ID and you use it to vote, a driver's license really in the state of Indiana just shows your residence and that you have an Indiana driver's license. It doesn't go into citizenship. Depending on what year you got that license and everything else. Certainly a utility bill doesn't do that. So we simply said, you know what, if you have a driver's license, maybe that's some assurance that you're also a citizen. So, we could have gone a lot deeper with that list, in my opinion, but we didn't. And that's part of the proof that shows, look, we're not targeting anybody, but we also need to make sure that we're not hurting the valid voter out there by having their vote diluted by someone who would cheat the system or vote illegally or whatever the situation. So that's what this is. We're completely within our rights. I helped write an amicus brief, which is Casey, a friend of the court brief recently with several other states in the Virginia case. So the Virginia case has already went up to the Supreme Court.
Correct.
And just a few hours ago, the Supreme Court said no. Virginia they shouldn't be kept from taking someone off the roll. So that should give Indiana now a green light. Now, the other difference.
Do you have time to stay with us?
Yeah, I'll stay
through the news break. I don't want to keep you here if you can't, but we are on a hard break here. I do apologize. We got more coming up with the Attorney General Todd Rokita. And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. And again, I am here with the Attorney General of the state of Indiana, Todd Rokita. Todd, again, thank you for joining us and giving us extra time. We're making him late to an event, by the way.
That's all right. Maybe I don't have to pay.
Hey, we can hope. So we left off with what is happening with these nearly 600,000 people who are registered but have not provided proof of citizenship, and what
Correct.
You and Diego Morales, the Secretary of State, are actually asking the federal government to do. Now, we're not the only state that's doing this.
No.
Ohio has done it. A couple of other states have done it, and they're saying that the Biden-Harris administration is not cooperating, not assisting them at all with citizen verification. You mentioned the Virginia case, which, again, broke this afternoon right before the show. Mm-hmm. So do you anticipate that you're going to get any help at all in trying to identify these 600,000
Well, again,
people?
like so many of the things now, the best solution is to elect President Trump, frankly. And, they're going to hem and haw. But the fact of the matter is the Supreme Court, we helped write the friend of the court brief for it, like I said, said no. States can purge voter rolls. Or certainly, the Virginia case said, well, we're not going to, the Department of Justice can't can't stop a state from doing it. I guess there's some ability for the state to still do it wrong. Yeah. Indiana won't do it wrong. We got a great system. We got excellent staffers, and having been a Secretary of State here, we have great staffers that know what they're doing when it comes to these roles. But the mini drama, right? This idea that the ACLU and all the leftists are going, and my opponent, who can't get out of our own way, condemning me for doing this, and the question becomes, why? Why are you guys so against making sure that only citizens vote?
Right.
And it's so obvious. It just defies, because we're not intimidating anybody. We're not just purging or trying to purge certain people, but there are folks, and I do want the word out, Casey, quite honestly, I do want people to understand, especially non-citizens, that it is a felony to vote if you're not a citizen. I want that out there. That's not intimidation. That's saving somebody from committing a felony. And so the way I look at this, because I think where your question went was to, hey, are you going to be able to do anything before the election? And I doubt the Department of Justice or NCSIC or whatever the acronym is, the people that are supposed to get us the list back and tell us who's a citizen and who's not. I doubt they're going to do anything before the election. So what this becomes then is a forensic tool. Because I will tell you, as long as I'm your attorney general, if I win re-election, one day I will get the list. I'm going to get this list, and I'm going to find out who's a citizen and not a citizen, and then I'm going to compare it to this other list, the other list being who voted this election. And I'm going to compare the two. And if I see the same name on both lists, the non-citizens and voted, we have a felony problem. And then it's a matter of finding you and working with the prosecutor of that county to get the job done, and I won't let it go.
When you have situations where in Elkhart, I've had people come forward in Elkhart and say, hey, I've got a relative. I've had power of attorney over them for over a decade. They're not of sound mind. Mm-hmm. People came into this facility. They registered them to vote. They filled out the ballot for them. They took the ballot, and they went back. We ended up finding out that everybody at that facility, I think it was about half a dozen people, all registered Democrat, all repeating the I hate Donald Trump line, which a staffer said to this particular relative. I got messages earlier this week that is happening in Whitley County. I've heard this happening on the Michigan side of the border. I mean, what can be done about that, and what should the process be for somebody who is in control of the legal abilities of a loved one when that happens, when they're in a care facility?
Yeah,
what should they do?
It's been a while since I've been the Secretary of State on this, but it's a gray area, right? Because if you're over the age of 18 and a citizen, you have a right to vote. Mm-hmm. And, you get, who's to decide you're not of sound mind, right? There's one or two people on these listening to this radio program right now that thinks I'm not of sound mind, right? And, so it's a real slippery slope to try to judge that as a third person. So the law basically reflects the fact that, hey, you're allowed to vote. You're allowed to not be questioned about your soundness. And I imagine that applies somewhat to the power of attorney as well. So
if we're going to fix that problem, we should probably have the legislature draw something up. That, hey, if you've lost the ability to make your own decisions, and somebody else has to make those for you.
And again, it's a real tricky wicket constitutionally because the Constitution says 18, U.S. citizen, you get to vote.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's a rough area. It's despicable if true. It's despicable again what these adults are doing to the feeble or to their children, and you see it happening on one side and one side only.
Right.
And whether it's corrupting our children, sexually changing them before they're 18, whatever the perversion is that they're about, it's all on the left side, and that should make the contrast super clear for who you need to put in office in 6 days.
Well, and again, we're talking with the Attorney General, Todd Rokita, who is up for re-election right now.
Yeah.
I've been telling people for the 13 years that I've been here that Indiana is moving in the direction that my home state of Nevada is moving. It's getting more blue. It's not real red at the state level. There are counties that are very, very red. But I've been very fearful that we could get a situation where it gets real close. And right now, I know for a fact that gubernatorial race has people nervous. And so that could affect, down ballot. Maybe Trump helps with that. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know yet. But what is your final pitch? What are some other issues that you want the voters to know about before they go and cast their vote for you?
Well, to know that I'm a fighter, that I work to protect people, and I will always fight for them. I'm pretty anti-establishment, even though I've been in office for a while. That doesn't define establishment. I have a pretty strong populist streak in me. And I feel, again, with the help of President Trump, who's endorsed me, I have endorsed him, that we're for the working men, and it's the leftists that are the friends now of the billionaires and the big woke left corporations that muzzle you at work and everything else. And we're the opposite of that. And so that's what motivates and inspires me to continue to serve. It's actually a fight against the taking over of our country into something that we never envisioned and never wanted. We are unique to world history. It's called American exceptionalism. It's not taught nearly enough anymore, but it's capital A, capital E, American exceptionalism. It's not a myth. It's real. It doesn't mean we're better than other countries, or we think we're better. We generally are. It means we're unique. It's the first time that the best ideas for self-governance ever came together at the same time in the same place. Never happened before in world history, except at the founding and our Constitution. And that's what I fight for, the rule of law, free speech, right to bear arms, freedom of association. Those are the cornerstones. So the order was God, then the people, then government. And it's a radical idea because it's never been that way before us. And these leftist fools are actively trying to destroy it simply for power. And I will fight it every moment that I can.
How can people in these last few days support your campaign?
ToddRokita.com, and I need millions of dollars. Please.
Attorney General Todd Rokita, thank you so much for the time. We do appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got more coming up on The Burning Truth.
Podcasts by Federated Media.